Hoş geldiniz. Bugünkü konferansımızın ikinci oturumuna başlayacağız. Welcome again. We will start the session 2. Only one of our presenters, our guests, will not join due to health problems. Now we will start our second session with the titled Traces of Space in Early Bronze Age Settlements in Ankara. Aydanur Yenel from Hasan Kalyoncu University. Now Aydanur Yenel will start her presentation. Thank you.
Sayın hocalarım, değerli katılımcılar, ben Aydanur Yenel, başkanımıza teşekkür ediyorum. Hasan Kalyoncu Üniversitesi Güzel Sanatlar ve Mimarlık Fakültesi doktor öğretim üyesiyim. Ayki Yenel ile birlikte hazırlamış olduğumuz Ankara'da erken Bronz çağı yerleşimleri üzerine bir sunum gerçekleştireceğiz. Konferansı düzenleyen, emeği geçen herkese teşekkür ediyorum. Şimdi sözü sunumu yapmak üzere Aybike Yenel'e bırakıyorum.
Good afternoon, I'm Aybike Yenel. I will make a presentation on traces of space in the early Bronze Age settlements in Ankara. This study aims to examine the development of mud brick houses in the historical process throughout the first settlements in Anatolia in general and the architectural aspects of the early Bronze Age settlements in Ankara in particular. In this context, examples of mud brick houses in the first settlements in Anatolia are presented chronologically in order to reveal the development of mud brick buildings in historical periods. The Atlatlıbel, Karaoğlan, Karayavşan, Eti Yokuşu, Külhöyük, Koçunbeli and Çayyalı Höyüks belonging to the early Bronze Age period, whose excavation work carried out were examined. Archaeological settlements are layers formation shaped by the different actions of people living in different scales in the historical process. In these settlements, a unique architectural identity has been formed by the reflection of the historical, cultural, and physical characteristics of the societies to the space. The local architectures of the societies living in Anatolian settlements have been shaped within the scope of their different values, traditions, beliefs, culture, and lifestyle characteristics. The spiritual setup that started with the transition from nomadic life to settled life in the historical development process has formed the architectural understanding. Mud brick is a building material that has been widely used in Anatolia since prehistoric times. After the destruction caused by nature and human use, the mud brick room was filled with soil and sand to obtain a new building area, and layers were formed over time. Let's look at examples of mud brick houses in chronological order in the first settlements in Anatolia. During the excavations of the Çayönü located in the Earthen district of Diyarbakır province, the first examples of stone-based mud brick structures were unearthed. Structures with different architecture plans, ground plan, grid plans, stone floor were found in the settlement's phases. During the excavation of the Aşıklıhöyük, located in the Gülağaç district of Aksaray, 4 layers with rectangular plans, mud brick structures in the traditional Aegean layout were unearthed. After the life of a mud brick house ended, the building was destroyed. The ruins were filled in the structure. It was understood during the excavations in the Hacılarhöyük, located in the Hacılar village of Burdur province, that there was a 16-phase settlement process with some interruption. Houses found in the excavations were square or rectangular in plan. The buildings were built with mud brick on stone foundations. Around the settlement, there is also a mud brick wall. The settlement in Çatalhöyük, located in the Chumba district of Konya province, was formed during the post-pottery Neolithic age by the addition of neighborhoods consisting of houses and temples built with mud brick and completely closed to the outside. The houses, which are similar in plan, were built with mud bricks in a rectangular plan without using stone foundations. In Ilıpınarhöyük, within the borders of Orhan Gazi district of Bursa province, as a result of the research carried out in the settlement layers, it was discovered that wood and mud brick were used together in the construction of the houses in Ilıpınar. As the region is rich in forest, these houses that were generally single room and rectangular plans. Located in the center of Kırklareli province, the Aşıkpınarhöyük was determined that the communities coming from Anatolia with the mud brick and stone tradition developed the wood that would later spread all over Europe in this region. Canasambanhöyük, located in the center of Karaman province, it dates back to the Chalcolithic age. The houses were built using mud brick due to the conditions of the region with rectangular or square rooms. The walls and floors of the buildings were covered with mud plaster. In Hattuşa, within the borders of the Boğazköy district of Çorum province, the historical period of the city starts from the early Bronze Age. The castle walls in this palace place, which was the capital of Hittite, were made of mud bricks, stone foundation, and mud brick wall were used by the Hittites in every period. Beyce Sultanhöyük in Çivil district of Denizli province. Some of the rectangular mud brick structures in the höyük resemble a macaron-like building type. Rectangular macarons are entitled from the west through forecourt. Regional characteristics related to geography also affected the development of architecture and local arts. Demircihöyük, located in the center of Eskişehir province, is a settlement reflecting the phase one of the early Bronze Age architecture. We can state that Demircihöyük has a social structure with development, social organization that has created common areas of use. The settlements were built in a circular or rectangular plan according to their topography. In Troy, located on the hill of Hisarlik in Çanakkale province, mud brick was commonly used in the construction of the house walls, as in many regions of Anatolia. In the Troy settlement, one of the important phase two of the early Bronze Age centers, structures that are rectangular and with house as well as other structures divided into many rooms were unearthed. Kanlı Geçithöyük in the center of Kırklareli province is a colonial settlement which is thought to be built by an immigrant group in the phase 3 of the early Bronze Age. First mud brick structures and then macaron-style buildings on stone foundations were observed. Finally, there is a settlement in the Arsantepehöyük in the center of Malatya province, dating back from the early Bronze Age to the Iron Age. As a result of the excavations carried out in the Höyük, a mud brick palace and a wide common area with monumental structures made of mud brick was unearthed. Ankara province and its surroundings have also hosted the earliest settlements in every prehistoric periods. As a transition and connection zone in the center of Anatolia, during the inventory studies carried out, a large number of archaeological settlements were identified in the borders of and districts of Ankara. The early Bronze Age settlements discovered as a result of the excavations carried out in the province of Ankara and its districts are dated back to the phase 2 and phase 3 periods. The early Bronze Age settlements excavated in the region are Allıklıbel, Eti Yokuşu, Karaoğlan, Karayavşan, Külhöyük, Koçunbelen, Çaylıhöyüks. Since the beginning of the period in Central Anatolia, traditional buildings with mud brick walls on stone foundations with multiple rooms, sometimes courtyards, with flat roofs have been used as residence in settlements in Ankara. Untitled is located southwest of Koçunbeli settlement. The building with mud brick walls has a single floor. However, today there are no remains of the architecture elements that were unearthed during the old excavations. Eti Yokuşu is approximately 5 kilometers from Ankara city center. It was partially destroyed before the excavation. Architecturally, it is stated that the structures in levels 2 and 3 are stone foundations and mud brick walls. Eti Yokuşu is considered as another settlement in the region of phase 3 of the early Bronze Age stage culture in Ağlatlıbel with its general data. Today, it's completely under structures. Karaoğlan is located south of Ankara city center. It's an important early Bronze Age settlement. It's not surrounded by a wall like other settlements of the same period in Anatolia. However, it is thought to be a developed society in which the division of labor, social hierarchy, and private property were shaped. Phase 2 of the early Bronze Age architecture consists of small but multi-room mud brick walls. The architecture remains uncovered after excavation have not been preserved. Karayavşan is located in the southwest of Ankara city center, east of Polatlı district. The architecture unearthed during the excavation is a rectangular plant structure with mud brick walls on the stone foundations. Karayavşan, which is thought to be one of the important settlements in the Ankara region, is one of the most for which the findings have not been published in detail despite its importance. Külhöyük is located in Himalayan district of Ankara province. On the highest part, there is a great plant temple, but built with thick walls or a large building that is thought to be used as an administrative building. Koçunbeli is located south of Yalıncak village, southwest of Ankara city center. 3 structures belonging to the upper first level, which do not provide a regular plan, and the stone foundations of the walls general extent in the north-south direction were unearthed. It is thought that the walls were raised as mud brick. The buildings are rectangular. The architecture remains of Koçunbeli were recovered in a very bad state. Last one, Çayyolu is located in the Çayyolu area within the borders of Yeni Mahalle district. The settlement was destroyed in various periods. Still, a large part of it has survived to the present day. As a result of the research carried out, 4 levels were identified in the Höyük. The buildings have stone foundations and a rectangular plan. While mud brick architectural elements were observed, the remains of buildings with stone foundations at first and later using stone and mud brick were found. In the Çayyolu, similar finds were discovered to those in Anlatlıbel, Eti Yokuşu, Karaoğlan, and Koçunbeli in the city center of Ankara. Today, there are still archaeological sites that have not yet been unearthed in the city of Ankara and are waiting to be discovered. In the study, in order to protect and document the mud brick construction technique and the building heritage, the development process of the mud brick building architecture was examined chronologically in the historical process over the first settlement in Anatolia. However, to better understand the mud brick housing architecture, it is necessary to examine the architectural structures of the settlements in all prehistoric periods in Anatolia in more detail. In this context, mud brick architecture in the early Bronze Age Greek settlements in Ankara has been studied. As a result of the zoning plans and human destruction in these settlements, excavations were carried out, unfortunately. The architecture remains have not been completely preserved. Project studies with a sustainable and holistic conservation approach for archaeological settlements in the province of Ankara and its surroundings should be addressed, preventing the destruction of the urban texture in archaeological settlements is possible by making conservation projects and integrating them into the city. The efforts which can be carried out by raising the awareness of conservation will ensure the preservation and sustainability of the characteristics of original settlements such as Ankara, which have witnessed many periods of history. Without deteriorating. Thank you for your listening to me.
Pardon. Thank you for your presentation. Now we will continue with the second participants from French. Chanel Rodriguez. She will present traditional methods to maintain and conserve earthen houses in Goa, India. Now we are listening Rodriguez.
All right. Hi, I will be presenting my paper on the traditional methods to maintain and conserve houses in Goa, India. This was part of my research on the houses of Goa and Portugal as part of my postmaster's DSR Earthen Architecture and Heritage in France. So I'll begin with the location of Goa. Goa is one of the 28 states in India. It is located on the southwest coast of India along the Arabian Sea. It is India's smallest state. A brief about Goa's history. Early Goans were hunter-gatherers and eventually tribal communities evolved. Various empires ruled Goa over the centuries, and the last one was the Portuguese, who were in Goa from 1510 to 1961, that is for 451 years. After that, Goa became part of the Union Territory of Goa and Daman and Diu, and in 1987, it became an independent state of India. Brief about the architectural evolution in Goa. Early Goans lived in caves, and as villages began to crop up, villages were like a cluster of houses that formed villages, and you had such clusters all over Goa, and that's how the architectural fabric of Goa was back in time. Eventually, independent houses came about. With the Portuguese, we had the Indo-Portuguese mansions. We had now we have villas and apartment blocks as well. So all these constitute Goa's architectural landscape today. Coming to the materials we use in construction. When indigenous villages, houses were built with materials that were found within the surrounding of the houses. So it was mainly palm leaves, earth, stones, etc. With the Portuguese, we began in the Portuguese time, houses were mostly built with laterite stones and earth, also naturally found in Goa. Today, we built with laterite stone and cement and cement mortars and plasters, and concrete blocks have just begun to spring up. We also have modern eco buildings making a slow comeback. These are mainly earth or laterite stone with earth mortars. For this research, I will be focusing mainly on the vernacular earthen structures of Goa. The ones that exist today mainly belong to the 18th and the 19th century. So why did I choose this research topic? The 18th and 19th century earthen houses in Goa still live, and they're still being in use. So my question was, what is it about these houses that have led them to live this long? Whereas the cement houses we built today live for about 30 to 50 years maximum, but the 18th and 19th century houses of Goa live even now. So the aim of this study was to unearth local building cultures and conservation methods that might have directly or indirectly contributed to the sustainability and longevity of Goa's earthen architecture. And with an intention to share this information with professionals and the public in Goa and abroad, facilitate the upkeep of earthen heritage. So I studied 16 earthen structures in Goa and analyzed them to find answers to my questions. Coming straight to the local building cultures of Goa, I have noted down 12 points in this research, in this paper, as to what might have likely contributed to the sustainability of these houses in Goa. So the first point is the earthen houses in Goa have load-bearing external walls, which assure the structural strength and the stability of these houses. My study showed 3 earth building techniques in Goa, which have walls of about 42 to 70 centimeters thick, adobe bricks, which have 26 centimeters thick walls, and rammed earth, which have 32 to 40 centimeters thick walls. For those who are new, cob is a technique where we mount the mud mix to form a short wall, which is one layer, and use a wooden bat to straighten and to shape the wall. Adobe bricks is when you put the mud into wooden molds and you sun dry them. And rammed earth is when you use 2 wooden planks and you ram the earth in between, and you take off the wooden planks eventually. And once that layer is dry, you build another layer over it, and that's eventually how you mount a wall. The second is the use of stone, particularly in the plinth area, along the corners and along door and window panes. Before stone was available commercially in Goa, people who lived in areas where stone was naturally available tried to use stone in the earthen houses. As stone became available commercially, people began buying a stone to use to incorporate them into the earthen structures. Stone were particularly used in the plinth area because it prevented water from the groundwater and water that accumulated during the rains to seep into the earthen walls, thus preventing the degradation of earthen walls. In corners, because flaking of earthen walls and wear and tear usually begin at the corners, and Goans realized that this part had to be better protected than the rest of the wall. And the same goes with the doors and window planes, which were also subjected to more wear and tear. So they chose particular parts of the house to be dressed with stone rather than with earth. Almost all houses in Goa have a gradient, a small slope at the foot of the external walls. This was to protect the main wall from rainwater. Just to mention, Goa has 4 months of torrential rains. There are 4 months of monsoon with storms and heavy rainfall. And protecting your house from rainwater is an integral part of constructions in Goa. So this little slope was sometimes also dressed with stones, prevented rainwater from entering into the main wall, thus protecting the walls of the houses. Did I miss one? Verandas and sopos. Sopos are traditional masonry seats in Goa, which was usually built on the front facade of the house. They were covered with a lean-to, which provided shade. Eventually, when the Portuguese came, this took form of a veranda with decorative columns, railings, and balustrades. This took form of a veranda, but the function still remains the same. It protected the main wall from rainwater. It provided a place for socializing, for enjoying the evening breeze, for musical performances, etc. The picture in red and yellow is what an 18th and 19th century house in Goa looks like, with the veranda and the sopos incorporated into them. Lime plasters in Goa. Lime in Goa was made from seashells because it is a coastal region. Seashells were baked and slaked to make lime. Lime plasters protected the earthen walls. They also provided, because it is a natural and breathable material, it provided a protective layer that also allowed water that might have gotten into earthen walls to evaporate. It is porous in nature, and it provided this breathing ability. Also, lime was sometimes mixed with mortars and building earth as it acted as a binding agent and strengthened the building. In this picture, we see a lime mixed with earth for mortars and lime repointing. Palm leaf barriers. Coconut trees are plenty in Goa, and palm leaf barriers are made parallel to walls of houses that are that face the direction of the wind and hence are subjected to rainwater spatter. So these parallel walls protected the earthen walls. They're called dolios in Konkani, which is Goa's local language. Rafters in the wood framework. So old Goan houses had baked earth roof tiles, which were supported by a wooden framework, and the rafters were made from the trunks of dead coconut trees. Now, why dead coconut trees? As explained by one of the masons, dead coconut trees were dry of sap and were dry of moisture, so they attracted less rodents and less termites, which meant that the roof framework would stay longer. Today we cut live coconut trees which attract termites, and they do not. The roof framework does not last as long as it lasted at the back in time. Houses in Goa have large overhangs that sometimes extend up to a meter and more. In addition to the main roof, every year before the monsoons, at least on walls that are subjected to rainwater spatter and above window panes, temporary overhangs were mounted. These were made of coconut palms, and today many of these are replaced by metal sheets because to avoid the annual maintenance. These protected water from entering the house from window openings and protected the walls from being degraded by rainwater. While temporary overhangs were installed every year, the vision to install these overhangs was done at the time of construction. So wooden hooks were implanted into earthen walls at the time of construction, on which the temporary overhangs could be easily mounted every year before the monsoons. A very important detail in the roofs of Goan houses, which often goes unnoticed, is the placement of batons. So batons are usually about 5 centimeters wide and 2.5 centimeters thick. And as you see in the pictures, they are usually placed with the width resting on the rafter. The last baton along the edge of the roof is placed in the upright position, or 2 instead of 1 batons are placed. That is to raise the edge of the roof a little higher, so that the downpour of rainwater from the sloping roofs fall a little more away from the wall from the wall than it would have if this was not the case, if this detail was not done. The 11th point is a baton at the edge of the ridge tile. This secures the position of the ridge tile, especially when there are heavy rains, storms, and winds. It secures position of the ridge tile directly, but indirectly in securing the position of the ridge tile, it secures the structural stability of the whole roof. Eaves. Eaves are usually seen in verandas of bigger mansion houses. They are usually they give an ornate detail to the roofs and the facade of houses, but it also protects the houses from rainwater spatter. So we see how early Goans used natural materials found within the surrounding to create intelligent designs and beautiful houses. That were comfortable to live in, that protected them from the harsh monsoons and from the harsh summers of Goa. Before I end, I would also want to add that having a house in Goa is more of an emotional attachment rather than a financial investment. For Goans living in Goa and those living abroad, and we have many Goans living abroad because of job and other reasons, there's always a need, there's always a strong desire to build a house in Goa, whether you are going to end up returning to your homeland or not. It is a sense of security that wherever in the world you live, and whatever may happen, you still have a home to come back. And it is also it provides this kind of security of having a home, and more than anything else, it is our way of putting a stamp on our homeland and saying that this is where we belong and this is where we come from. It forms a part of our identity. So a home is more than a structure. And this picture of the house that I grew up in. It still lives. It's still there in Goa. Thank you very much. So it's Deo Barang Korwe in Konkani, which means may God do you good. So Deo Barang Korwe.
Thank you so much. Also, I would like to thank you for your on-time presentation.
You're welcome.
Also, thank you for information about the traditional conservation methods in India, Goa. And now we will continue our third presentation. Traditional flat earthen roof construction techniques in Kemaliye and the importance of local foreman. Our participants, Enise Yasemin Gökil Arpacı from Yıldız Teknik University will present us. Now we will continue. Enise Yasemin, you can continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Teşekkür ederim hocam. Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank the organization committee and the colleagues. Today I'm going to make a presentation about the traditional flat earthen roof construction techniques in Kemaliye and the importance of local foremen, prepared by me, Dilek Ekşakbulut, and Saadettin Erdem Yıldız.
Tam ekran yapabilir misiniz acaba? Teşekkürler.
Settlements that have unique architectural qualities and local identities are the archives that contain tangible and intangible traces of the history of humanity and nature. In order to ensure the sustainability of these settlements, they should be analyzed in detail, and architectural decisions should be performed from a local perspective rather than imposed from outside. One of the most important representatives of the local perspective is the local foreman. Kemaliye is one of the districts of Erzincan province. It is also home to unique house types of Anatolian architecture. Due to the high rate of migration from rural areas to cities, periodical maintenance of these traditional houses could not have been performed. Then damage occurred in the houses, especially at the flat earthen roofs. In order to prevent these damages, the roofs and the facades of the houses have been covered with metal sheets that cause visual pollution, as you can see in the pictures. In 2018, a KERPIC'2020 project titled Solution Proposals for the Preservation and Rehabilitation of Traditional Flat Earthen Roofs of Kemaliye Houses was initiated. Within the scope of this project in 2018 and 2019, site studies were carried out. In the site study in 2018, interviews with 7 local foremen were performed and 6 traditional flat earthen roofs present in Kemaliye were analyzed and documented. Then, traditional flat earthen roof construction techniques in Kemaliye was archived by the way of producing construction receipt and drawings. Kemaliye has a unique geography. It is surrounded by mountains, as you can see in the pictures, and among these mountains, the Karasu branch of the Fırat River flows. And Kemaliye is located on a steep slope overlooking Karasu. In the ground floors of Kemaliye houses, natural stone walls with bonding timber are used, and the upper floor or floors are constructed with a wooden frame system filled with mud brick. In addition to user needs, the effect of natural environments and climate are also taken as reference in the location, orientation, and space organization of the houses. If we're going to talk about the importance of the local foremen, according to ICOMOS, local foremen are the sources of know-how that originate from the past, and they do not consume the environment. And also, they have the experience to know where the materials used in the buildings are provided and the behavior of the materials within the structure. Since the architectural applications in Kemaliye and its village are carried out by the local foremen, it can be said that today the continuity of the architectural texture can be achieved a large extent. As mentioned before, for the documentation of the know-how present in the field of the traditional or vernacular culture, Within the scope of TÜBİTAK project, interviews were carried out with 7 local foremen. And these are the pictures of the project team with the local foreman while making interviews in Kemaliye. And these are the pictures of the interview and structural analysis with the local foreman, Mahmut Okçu, also in Kemaliye. In addition to the interviews, 6 open section flat earthen roof samples were examined by the project team. Traditional structural system and open section roof samples can be also seen in the pictures. The data obtained via examinations and the information from the interviews were compared. Then system section and the construction receipt of traditional flat earthen roof in Kemaliye were produced. According to this, after roof beams called döşeme are constructed, it is covered with wooden seating cladding. Then wood sticks called mertek are laid through it. Then thin tree branches are laid to fill the gaps between them. Then the first earth layer called yaşkuru is laid as a mud to provide heat insulation. This mud layer is made of a cohesion-free soil and water. Then, after the mud layer dried, a unique special earth layer called gavcin is laid as a second earth layer. This earth layer is a kind of cohesive soil and used as a water insulation material. Then the layers are covered with unique rıhtım stone in order to preserve the roof from surface erosion, the wind erosion. Then the whole layers are rammed, compressed with a stone called low stone by rolling it. The low stone and the rıhtım stone can be seen in the picture A. This is the low stone and the rıhtım stone can be seen. The process of ramming with the low stone is repeated periodically after rain. In case of snow, after shoveling, it is waited for a mild weather to melt the frost. Then the roof is rammed. In order to remove the water from the roofs, generally the roofs are constructed with a slope of 5 to 10% in one direction, and a slope gutter system is used, as you can see in the picture. However, slope gutter system is not the only way used for removing the water from the roof. For a second solution, a piece of wood is placed with a slope, here it is, with a slope on the facades between the cohesive and non-cohesive soil layers. In this way, it is ensured that the water leaking through the soil from there, leaking from the soil that swells due to snow is removed from the interface between these layers. As a conclusion, within the scope of this study, interviews with 7 local foremen were performed and 6 traditional flat earthen roofs present in Kemaliye were analyzed and documented. At the end of the study, unique roof sections and the construction receipt of traditional flat earthen roofs in Kemaliye were produced. In the scope of the study, the following items are found. Parapet systems called swing that are specific to the region are found in the traditional flat earthen roofs of Kemaliye houses. Has been found out that in order to prevent the surface erosions, stones called rıhtım stone are used in the construction of the roofs. That technique is specific to Kemaliye. It has been seen that as the first installation precaution, with the use of rıhtım stone and the gavcin soil, most of the water is removed from the impermeable slope surface and direct it towards the gutter. As the second precaution, a piece of wood is placed between the cohesive and non-cohesive soil layers. As a result, the local foreman and the know-how these local foremen are of great importance in terms of understanding and analyzing the traditional architecture, preserving the architectural heritage, and conserving the current buildings. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your presentation. It's also important for conserving traditional flat roofing techniques in Turkey. We have trouble this kind of technique usage. Conserving, also repairing is very valuable research. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Now we will continue. Parisa Abdashi Harestan, Yazd University from Iran. She will present us design criteria for new construction in historic fabrics according to international experiences, a case study, historical context of Yazd. We are listening, Parisa Abdashi.
Hello, good day.
Hello. You can share your screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Design criteria for new construction in historic fabrics according to international experiences with case study historical fabric of Yazd. In current research, in order to suggesting the design criteria for new construction in historic fabrics, such as Yazd historic fabrics, international experiences related to renovation and building new construction historically are surveyed. Nowadays, extensive full-scale interventions to improve historical regions are performed around the world. Generally, the subject matter of conservation of historical fabric damage as a result of various factors, including the decayed and unsanitary condition of historical buildings, damage caused by international wars, the need for urgent reconstruction, and the general protests against social conditions. This led to the formation of international documents to address this problem. These interventions should be carried out according to properties such as scale, form, texture, volume, and patterns that are specific to the intervention region. Since the formation in the mid-19th century, international documents and resolutions have provided different views regarding new construction and urban development in historical fabrics that is based on the specific of the research and the context. We can categorize the documents in several general groups, including those that approve new construction, those that disapprove it, and those that approve on certain conditions. Now, new construction in historical fabrics differs in each region, and they are based on specific properties and policies of the region. But several general viewpoints can be identified, such as zero-degree integration, contrast, droid and temporary analogy, and invisible approach. In fact, in new buildings, is constructed behind a historical facade. In zero degree, it is designed in difference to the surrounding historical fabric, and in integration, the new building is integrated with the surrounding fabric. Contrast includes a deliberate distinction of the new building. Dry and temporary includes designing a temporary building in surrounding fabric and invisible approach. This method is manifested in the form of mirror method, underground construction.
Parisa, pardon, could you use earphone? Yeah, listeners couldn't understand the voice clearly.
Yeah. Wait a minute, please.
We cannot hear you. Can you check it again?
Hello. Do you have my voice?
Yeah, it's better. Please use it closer to your mouth.
Excuse.
Thank you. Voice lost again.
Okay. Is it alright? You have it?
It was better before. Could you use it the same way?
Okay. Can I come, please?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, and invisible afro. This method is manifested in the form of mirror method, underground construction, and etc. In Iran, because the most historical buildings are generally one story, the method of underground construction is welcome. New construction in historical fabric of the art, considering the four main periods are presented here. First period. In this period, architecture is influenced by foreign models and rapid change caused by modernism, and the past is refuted through the destruction of parts of the fabric, such as round house. In second period, lifestyle change and the entry of urban facilities into fabric, inappropriate regulations resulting from poor training, imported cars and materials, and extension of the change made in the previous period are factors that influence the architecture in this period. In third period, the end of traditional construction methods, entering of non-local consultants into construction, uncontrolled development of the city, and using industrial materials happened in this period. In fourth period, regulations violations due to interest-seeking investment, poor quality of education, increase in workforce, introduction of various materials and styles, and consequently an increase in the use of internet and magazines are factors that influence architecture in this state. By using international documents and methods, can extract the general items which can provide unique criteria to each historical fabric. But in order to design in historical fabric, other smaller cases must also be considered following the principles mentioned. To better understand these smaller principles, some of these items are considered below. 4. Harmony with the general shape of surrounding buildings, avoiding imitation the context while preserving existing features. Creating similarity and homogeneity between old and new buildings, abstracting in creating new forms based on old ones. New buildings should be distinguishable. In hierarchy and spatial organization. The supervision of functions, knowledge of geometric and design criteria specific design criteria specific to each region. Observing hierarchical principles that create meaning, such as the hierarchy of access to courtyard in Yaz historical buildings. In density, height, and skyline. Following the general rhythm of the fabric in designing facades and urban plans, using special volumetric elements to increase the height of the building, along with the use of motifs and details in the facade and to resolve the height difference. In vernacular design, here being vernacular doesn't solely mean using traditional technology, material, and form. Rather, this is an abstract architecture rising from cultural context. Neither tradition nor space modernism are present in this architecture, and rather based on contemporary. In function, functional patterns of buildings are important factors in determining the architecture, because we can see the role of function in providing larger space in Saadet Mehrajan factory or Goldsand cinema. In materials, color combinations that are in harmony with adjacent buildings while being distinguishable do not use materials that distract from the historical building. And in detail and ornamentation, using modern details can be reinterpretation of relationship between old and new buildings, and using them in design can create similar or regional properties in buildings. In scale and proportions, observing spatial hierarchy by creating small and big spaces in plans, adapting to the fabric skyline in facade, human scale, compatibility with building function, and the scale of neighboring buildings. In original patterns in architecture and culture, attention to the principle of unity in traditional architecture and using patterns in abstract way in new construction. In this research, in order to achieve a compatible structure with the content, with the help of studies on successful international examples and related research, as well as historical context of life, the following criteria are presented. Number 1, all examined documents and methods stress a complete study of the context in the physical, cultural, architectural, and other concepts of the historical fabric before any action. The compiled regional guidelines for designers should not include dictions that discourage creativity in design, but an unified approach should be evident in all design. Any interventions that threaten theoretical and practical aspects of the historical fabric should be avoided, such as building high structure or construction with inconsistent material in history fabric. Avoiding any direct imitations from patterns of the fabric and at the same time developing inspired ideas by traditional concepts in the fabric, using modern architecture alongside the historic one, using new construction techniques in new buildings, and creating new functions in historic buildings or new ones in order to improve quality of life in historic fabric. And due to the vastness and importance of Yaz's historical fabric and being inscribed as a World Heritage City, we can consider integrity as the most important criterion in this architecture, following some factors affecting the integrity of historic fabric of Yaz are presented as explained in figure. Thank you for your listening. Sorry, because my voice problem.
Thank you, dear Paris Savdashi, for your presentation. Now we will continue. Rasha El-Borgi from Istanbul Technical University. She will present us earth architecture in this Siwa oasis, Egypt, and the building with Karshif material. Now we are listening, Rasha. I think we have, okay. Could you begin with full screen?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but
Okay.
now third presentation is on the screen.
Okay. First of
Okay.
all, I'm sorry for my voice and some coughing because I'm a little sick. And I would like to thank Bilgi Hoja and and Fatih Sultan Muhammad University for invitation to this conference. I'm Rachel Borgi, an Egyptian architect, and I'm going to present today a paper entitled Earth Architecture in the Siwa Oasis, Egypt, and Buildings with Karshif Material. First of all, as we know, with Earth architecture, we get an environmental friendly building. So in paper, I'm gonna talk and mention about first the feature of mud architecture and Karshif is building material, and also we'll mention about the thermal properties of mud building and Karshif as a building material, which in fact they have proven efficient in the thermal properties is a good insulator as well. And there will be like an example. It's a traditional mud building from Siwa Oasis, and we'll make like a small comparing
for the temperature inside the building, inside the traditional mud building, and with the skeleton house, which will this comparing led us to the perfect reading in the mud house for the temperature. And finally, to get the conclusion, which is first, the importance of considering thermal properties of mud and kerchief building. Second, it's important for designers to understand the impact of building materials on both users and environment. In Egypt, Egypt has many oases such as Bahariya, such as El Farafra, El Dakhla, El Kharga, and Siwa oases as well. And mainly they are using the local material in construction, like palm tree, olive tree, and kerchief as a building material, especially in Siwa. And kerchief is taken from the shores around the salty lakes in Siwa oasis. So it creates a best low cost and zero carbon building almost there. And in general, we will find the mud building distinguished by, first, it's not a natural material in most of Egypt, easy to be found. Second, it has thermal gain and storage properties, so it doesn't lose heat quickly. It's considered a real threat to modern buildings because it's considered a strong competitor with what the modern buildings could in the environment. Recreate the relationship between man and architecture. And when talking about architecture in Egypt, so it has been known since ancient time because of the rich soil around the river Nile or in the oases like Siwa, which is also Siwa oasis, I mean, rich with different types of soil like argillite, and this it's a kind of stone taken from quarries 8 kilometers far from Siwa. Tafla, it's a kind of mud can be found under the salt crust. Limestone, sandstone, and kerchief. Kerchief material is the salt blocks around a salty lakes in Siwa. It contains some mineral materials like sodium chloride with some dust of clay and sand. It also contains some other salts like potassium chloride, and in some occasions like sandstorms, quarters, feldspar, and clay minerals can be included and found in kerchief. Here in the slide, here we can find it's the lakes in Siwa. The kind of there are so many lakes in Siwa, and we can see around the lakes it's the salt, and it's mixing with some mud, and from this mixture we get the kerchief. Here is the limestone, sandstone, and it is the original shape of kerchief. The thermal properties of mud and kerchief. In fact, we can find the mud absorb the solar radiation during the daytime and naturally stores the heat inside it to lose it gradually and slowly at night. It's normally how the mud building work, and also the kerchief. It has the same working by the same way and has the same properties of the mud. But kerchief contains salt, which gives other properties, impact, and some other positive impacts and properties. Here, for example, it is the wall kerchief, the inside and outside building. The solar radiation come directly on the wall. Some of the radiation reflect, and some is losing. And at night, the long wave absorbing to inside the building. Siwa Usir is located in west part of Egypt near Libya border. Here it is the map of Egypt. Here is the Siwa Wasir near the border of Libya. And here it's a lot of, we can see the lakes in the Siwa. Here is a general view of Siwa Oasis from above as an example. Sorry. Siwa as a name, it means the land of palm because it's so famous of palm trees. Shali city is the old town of Siwa. It's totally made of kerchief material. And here is another modern example. It's Adri Ramallah Hotel. It's also made of kerchief, and everything around and inside the hotel is natural. Technology is totally forbidden of using inside. In Siwa Oasis, we can find a mountain of dates like this, and Amun Temple and Bathut Temple, as Siwa Oasis is really so ancient place in Egypt. Sorry. The example of Syrian traditional house shown traditional built from local material, where the wall made of kerchief material with using the salt mud mortar. The construction is made in success in layers, and the blocks which formed from kerchief are left for one to 2 weeks until each layer dry up. There is a courtyard is serving a function space by the air inside the courtyard and expel it in a circular movement. The external wall architecture to create some shadow on the face and reducing the solar radiation effect. And the roof made of palm trunk. Like example, usually it's the house is built by 2 floors, roof made of palm trunk and covered by mortar of kershif. Real example. And when we talk of texture, it is the ceiling inside, wooden ceiling inside the building. Section of it is the kershif wall, outer mortar. Here is the outer mortar. We sometimes use a sand plate to create some shadow. Beams are made, or we are using the palm trunks for beams, and in the ceiling or the roof, we are also and cover it by kershif mortar. Here is how we are using the kershif. We don't make it in blocks. We just use the original shape of it. And when we compare the thermal performance of traditional and modern house, the comparison between internal temperature, traditional kershif house and modern skeleton type house. Kershif house gives low reading compared to the skeleton house, as it's shown in the chart later. Here, the blue one is the out temperature. Orange is the traditional house. Gray is the skeleton house. And as we see, in the living room and bedroom and reception, always the kershif or the mud building was giving the lowest reading and coolest cooling area. And by measuring the percentage of the thermal insulation of kershif and concrete or skeleton house, the kershif gave us the highest percentage. To find the conclusion in the end, the mud architecture through the history has shown an a good affection to interaction with the surrounding environment. It also showed efficient thermal performance inside the building. The kershif material, however, it's a building material. It's also a natural thermal insulation material. This is what appeared in the result of the experiment. Thermal traditional car-shaped house was better as a better than the skeleton house. Therefore, it's important for designers to understand the impact of the materials on users and environment around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rasha Elborgi. Thank you for the research comparison of modern skeleton buildings and the traditional mud houses. Gives us important knowledge about the future design and also conserving the traditional houses. Now we will continue with Şeyma Sarıbekiroğlu, İzmir Institute of Technology. She will present us Earthen flat roofs as a forgotten local building tradition of Barbaros, Urla, İzmir. Now we are listening Şeyma Sarıbekiroğlu.
Good afternoon. I am Şeyma Sarıbekiroğlu. I am a PhD student in Architectural Restoration Department of Izmir Institute of Technology. Today I will present the outcomes of our research paper prepared together with Assistant Professor Dr. Fatma Nurşen Kul Özdemir from the Architectural Restoration Department of the same university. Our presentation is entitled as Earthen Flat Roofs as a Forgotten Building Tradition of Barbaros, Urla, İzmir. In my presentation, I will cover respectively location of Barbaros, existing situation of earthen flat roofs in Urla, architectural characteristics of traditional Barbaros houses, earthen flat roof system in Barbaros, and lastly, conclusion remarks. Firstly, I will show location of Barbaros. Here you see. Barbaros is a rural settlement in the Izmir metropolitan city of Turkey. It's in Urla district. It used to be in a village status until 2012. However, with the law number 6,306, it's a neighborhood of Urla district today. The settlement is located on Barbaros Plain, together with Uzunkuyu, Zeytinler, and Birgi settlements. Here you see the view of Barbaros settlement while reaching it via motorway. According to Kırcalı, who has recently finished her master thesis about the rural settlements of Urla, among 15 rural settlements, only 4 still have buildings with earthen flat roof. These settlements are Bademler, Barbaros, Kadovacık, and Özbek. It is stated while Bademler, Kadovacık, and Özbek have only 1 building with earthen flat roof, Barbaros has many. The number did not given in this study. And we have documented 14 earthen flat roof houses in Barbaros in 2017. Traditional house units in Barbaros has a square or rectangular plan with mostly just one space for the main necessities of living, such as cooking, eating, resting, and sleeping. And all 9 houses examined within the scope of this study are this kind, with just one space for living. Traditional architectural elements of living spaces are yunak, which is bedding cabinets, cupboards, jug niches, shelves, and fireplaces. House units can be 1 story with an adjacent or separate barn, or 2 stories with a barn at the ground level and a living space on top. The living spaces on top of barns are reached with exterior stone masonry stairs. The walls are stone masonry.
Şeyma Hanım, sesiniz kapalı. Ses gelmiyor Şeyma Hanım.
Şimdi duyabiliyor musunuz?
Evet, duyuyoruz. Sağ olun.
Evet, evet, şu anda
Ve
duyuyoruz.
görüntü de var mı?
Görüntü var ama sunumunuz şu an gitti. Deminki bağlantı.
Tekrar paylaşır mısınız?
Yani görüntü var mıdan kastım, evet, sunum var mı? Pardon, öyleyse. Niye böyle oldu anlamadım. Geri geldi mi?
Evet, evet.
Tekrar paylaştım.
Buyurun. Şu anda
Tamam,
tamamdır.
teşekkür ederim. In 2017, Earthen flat roofs documented. 3 years later, another site survey done to see the current condition of the buildings. Interviews are conducted with 2 old builders who are Ahmet Koşfur and Suat Taşkın. And the construction process of an earthen flat roof is experienced with one of old builders, Ahmet Koşfur, who supervised the process. Through site survey, 14 houses with earthen flat roof are documented. Here you see the locations of these houses. The given numbers here around the circle are the parcel numbers of the houses, and in following slices, photos of the houses will be given together with these numbers. These are the photos of the 14 houses. Here in this slide you see 7 of them. These are the remaining 7. Here you see 2 of them together. Among these 14, 9 houses could be examined in detail because it was only possible to enter inside of these 9. All 9 housings, buildings were not in use, and unfortunately they were all in ruined state due to being exposed to weathering conditions. However, this ruined state made it possible to see sections of the wall, binding system and materials, and most importantly for this study, the roof layers. Among the 9, 5 houses are 1 story, and the other 4 are 2-story buildings. Among examined 9 houses, 6 have the main and secondary beam system. In this system, 1 main beam passes through the middle of the space and secondary ones put on top of it. 1 have a 1 main beam system, and roofs of the other 2 houses are almost totally collapsed and their beams did not exist. In 3 houses, there are posts in the middle of the space. In one example, there is a post just next to the wall at the end of the main beam here. And bolsters between the main beam and post or walls exist, or post can be in Y shape to embrace the main beam, as in this example. On top of beams, covering layer of the roof were observable in 3. 2 houses have some timber as a covering layer. After timber covering, there are moss and earth layers. 1 house has sandalwood branches on top of beams as covering layer. Bush, moss, and lastly earth layer comes. While others do not have a well-preserved form as a chimney cap, 1 have a ceramic pot on top of the masonry chimney. A water spot was observed only in 1 house. The short parapet wall of the roof above the eave level has a void with a slate stone on top, and emission tile exists at the bottom to flow water on it. Here. So, the earthen flat roof system is composed of beams and covering layers. If the main and secondary beam system exists, there is a timber post with a square or circular section in the middle of the space. There can be a bolster between the post and main beam. Alternatively, timber post can be in various beams covered with sawn timber or branches collected from the forest. Sandalwood used to be used for this layer, and this layer was called saran. On top of saran or sawn timber, bushes such as myrtle and moss put to keep the earth falling into the space. Moss is collected from shores of Gülbahçe, a close seaside settlement. Then any kind of earth put, and lastly geren, which is defined as the earth that prevents the percolation of water, and earth unable to water absorption is put. And geren is available in the near geography at the southwest border of the settlement and around Piney Graveyard in Barbaros. It was laid for 5-6 centimeter thickness and as almost flat with an inclination just enough for water flow. Geren was compressed with a stone roller regularly to keep its waterproof character. And from 2017 to 2020, among 14 houses with earthen flat roofs, 4 had changes. 2 of them had pitched roof, these 2 examples. One house is totally collapsed and a new building has been constructed in its place. And this one, the roof is removed totally. In one change, while changing the earthen flat roof of the housing with pitched one, main beam kept in its place and reused. Here you see the earthen flat roof. In this view, it's almost all layers removed, and here you see the main beam reused in the pitched roof. While traditional rural buildings are altered without respect to their traditional character or are left to destruction, some contemporary projects give reference to traditional earthen flat roof. Here you see some examples. While these 2 on top just give a reference formally, this one also has an earth layer. So to conclude, documenting the earthen flat roof construction system as a part of the rural heritage of Barbaros, which is about to disappear, is an important step to conserve this tradition. The information shared by this study is hoped to be used in repairs, renovation, and alteration projects in Barbaros and its neighbor settlements. New existence of flat roofs in the geography with modern construction may serve as a model and can support the conservation of earthen flat roof tradition. Instead of implementing inharmonious modern roof systems at the traditional buildings, the environment-friendly original roof system can be applied and architectural rural heritage can be sustained. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you for your presentation, dear Şeyma Sarıbekiroğlu. Now we reach the end of session 2